Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Christian Reeve Podcast. This one is particularly long overdue. We have the amazing Josh Leonard back on the show, who you may or may not know has his own podcast, the Pursuit of Infinity podcast. I don't know if I've really spent enough time plugging that. It's a great show, it has some fantastic guests. It's been going for a while now. But before we get into that, how you doing, Josh? You all right?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I'm alive. I'm alive. That's as good as it's gonna get for now. You know, it's like what's that old expression? Life imitating art, imitating life, whatever the fuck it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a song on my album called Just Existing, and I wrote that song like 5 years ago, I want to say. And I'd say it's like even more relatable now than it was then. And I'm like, that's not good. That's just,
That's how you know you have a good song, though.
Maybe. I don't know.
Transcends time itself, Christian.
But the wrong reasons, though, man. That's not what you want. Anyway, this isn't about me, man. Let's talk about the podcast for a little bit. So, how long's it been going now?
A few years. I think it was 2022. I started it in January.
Yeah. What's the schedule like? Because I see every now and again an episode gets dropped. So like, are you guys just a lot busier? Because you do it with your brother.
Yeah, I mean the schedule used to be a lot more consistent, but it just, as you know, it's super time consuming. And with just normal life, my work and my job and all that stuff, it gets a little difficult to maintain that weekly episode drop. But I do my best. I have a bunch of interviews in the log that haven't been released yet, so I'm just steadily working on trying to get those out too from months ago. And yeah, me and my brother have to record an episode soon, because usually what we do is I do an episode with him and then an episode the next with a guest. And I think I have 2 guests in a row this time. So it's about time me and my brother get back into it.
Why'd you do your podcast?
It's a great question. Well, I can kind of say the origination of the podcast was, I'm very into psychedelics, if anybody has listened to you and I in the past. And I took this course, and it was called Navigating Psychedelics for Clinicians and Therapists, just so I can get, a better handle on, the actual, the care of someone else during the experience of a psychedelic. It's always good to research harm reduction and, try to make the most of these experiences. So that's why I took this course. And at the end of it, there was what they called an integration project, where we were tasked as the students to create some sort of a project, a plan, a piece of art, like anything really that integrates what we learned through the course. Some people created music, other people created physical art. Somebody applied for a job, with psychedelics. It could really be anything. Yeah.
For real?
Yep. Yeah. They applied for a job with, it's called MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, which they do research into MDMA and a bunch of other psychedelic substances. So this guy applied for a job through them.
I thought you meant like went through the whole process, like rocked up to the job interview and he's just like out of his mind on psychedelics. Like, why are you here? I'm like, that's a good question.
That would be...
Why are we here?
Try to interview for a job under the influence of psychedelics.
Oh, it's been done.
Oh, I mean, sure it's been done.
To be fair, it would get you through those dumb fuck questions. Like, I've been sort of on and off applying for jobs, trying to, I don't know, make my shit a little bit more bearable. For all artists struggling, you know the deal. But anyway, I get tired of stupid questions. Like, why do you want this job? Like, motherfucker, I need money. I'm broke.
They expect you to lie. You have to lie your way through an interview if you want to do
well.
well.
Why, though? Everyone knows you're lying.
Yep.
The interviewer knows you're lying. You know you're lying. Everyone in the room knows you're lying. I would argue integrity is fucking more important than hello, I don't know, Mr. Rogers, and I'm perfect for your little job and organization. Like, that's not a normal human being. If I was running a company, right, and there was a guy who rolled up to the interview and was like, oh, I'm in love with work. I'm born to work. I'd be like, get the fuck out of here, you psychopath.
Right? I'm
like,
born to be in an office somewhere. Like, come on.
I want to hear you say, all right, look, I work 9 to 5, and then as soon as I'm off, whatever, I go fishing, hiking, I see my wife and kids, whatever. I'm like, great, brilliant. That's what I want to hear. If you're obsessed with work, then you have problems. There's nothing wrong with being passionate about work, to be clear. But if you just live and breathe work and that's all you do, and you see it in workplaces as well, it always becomes this big problem where it soaks into it, because there's that one, it'll always be like a higher up manager who has this expectation of like, oh, you're leaving? It's 5 o'clock. You're leaving? Yeah, motherfucker, I'm paid till 5. What do you mean? I actually had this happen in a job I started back in Europe. There was a manager who said that to me, and I was like, yeah, did I get the end time wrong? 5 o'clock? Yeah. Like, and she was like, oh, okay, yeah, we just stick around. And I'm thinking, well, you can do that if you want, but and it's that whole pressure thing, isn't it? It's like, you can't leave till I leave. It's power trip bullshit, and I don't play that. I think this is why I don't work in corporate. All jobs try it, but it's very easy to get sucked up in that and forget yourself. Remember, you can always quit. You can always say no. And a lot of the time, that's all work is, isn't it? It's just grandstanding and, learning that you have to have balls and just turning around and saying, like, no, not doing that, not doing that, not doing that, no.
And if you say yes one time, then you create the precedent that, like, you're going to be, like, that becomes part of the expectation then. And that's a problem, because sometimes you might want to go above and beyond. Sometimes you might want to earn that raise or whatever it may be. But the problem is when you begin to create the expectation for yourself that you're going to work overtime and you're going to do the things that they want you to do, it's tough.
Worst job you've ever had? Go.
Dude, I've only had 2 jobs.
Flex.
I started my first job out of high school. Like the day after I graduated high school, I started my first job at a car dealership. I stayed there for 11 years while I worked my way through college. And then,
well done.
Yeah, a few days after I graduated college, I was offered a random job, a corporate job, and I'm still there. So, only 2 jobs.
All right, fair. Well, I mean, you seem happy, and that's the key. In any case, I always say, car dealership, huh? That must have been a bit crazy.
Yeah, it was awesome though. It's like, so I started off in the recon department, just like detailing cars. So I learned how to clean cars and, work with cars and all that stuff. And then I moved from there to being like on the lots and like, supervising the lot crew and, checking in cars off of truckloads and stuff. It was mindless work, but it's interesting when you're working in like the dirt and the grime and you're making no money and everybody around you is in the same position, you make like the best of friends. Like my best friends I've made, at that job, and I left that job in 2019 and I still have, great friends from that position, because it's like when you're in the dirt with somebody, you create a different kind of bond than when you're like dressed up in an office with people. It's a different type of thing. And then, on the weekends you're going out drinking with these people, and it was great times. I don't regret a second of it.
I like to call it in the trenches.
Yeah,
it's
in
like,
the trenches, man.
I was talking to someone at work the other day who works a different, so like one of the jobs I do is like hotel, right? So we've got like the night team, the morning team, and like the nights team, right? And the nights team famously are like always fighting each other, and it's like, and basically one of them is complaining to me, and there's someone else from my team there, and it's like the handover period, so like they come in late and then there's like a crossover of an hour and then we go home, right? So they're complaining about what it's like at the nights, and I'm sitting and listening to this. It's stuff I've heard a million times, and I'm like look, y'all need to figure this out. You need to sit down and just figure it out. And then she keeps going on, and I'm like, listen, this is how I see it, right? You're in trenches, right? That's what customer service is. You're in the trenches and you're constantly being fired at. Why would you then turn and start firing at your own soldiers? Do you know what I mean? Insanity. And like, I could see the other woman that works on my team just look at me and just start laughing. Like, it's like, you know what I'm saying though? Like,
I think that's common in the night crew people too, because you gotta like think they're, especially if you're just starting out, you have to adjust to sleeping during the day and being up at night. That's got to be difficult. I feel like that has to be just a bit depressing.
Yeah, no, you're right. But they have the benefit of it being like dead. Like there's no one around. You get like the few odd people. Obviously at the weekend, you're probably going to have a few more. But a lot of the time it's dead. So it's like, okay, who wants to clean this department? Who wants to do the floor walks? Who wants to do this, that, and the other? It's kind of like, people apparently don't want to do jobs. It's very like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And for the most part, I think in a job, you kind of have to just do as you're told. I said to my boss when he came in, the new hotel manager, I've had 3 in the time I've worked at this place. And I remember just giggling with him about it. Like, this is crazy. But I was like, we were having our like 5-minute convo of like, okay, this is what I want, this is what you want. Okay, great. You know, I like to be upfront about shit like that. You know, just no bollocks, just get to the point, right? And I think over the years, people have appreciated that, and I've gotten what I want because I don't bullshit people. I don't try to like hamstring them. You know, sometimes I think if I put forward an idea, it might sound a bit like an ultimatum, but it's more kind of like a, okay, this is what I want. If you can't give it to me, I'll leave. But like, shake hands, walk, you know, no problems, no unprofessionalism, no, oh, I can't be asked for the last 2 weeks of my contract kind of bullshit. Like, be professional. But you're allowed to, and I said this, like, you're allowed to turn around and say, oh, I'm not really good at this. I prefer not to do this. But you don't turn around and say like, I'm not doing this. You know, if you get asked to do something and it's your boss, do it to the best of your ability. You know, I always tell people that I work with, people that I work for, that look, if you put me here, yeah, I won't like it, but that's neither here nor there. But it will slow things down. I won't be good at it. Then no amount of training me to do this thing will make me good at it. Like the thing I pushed against is, don't put me in this restaurant. I've done a la carte restaurants before. I suck at restaurants. Leave me on the bar, leave me on reception, leave me on like anything else. But just, you know, but every time I've been asked to come there and help, I do it, you know. And I guess I try to look at it more from a business perspective of what's going to be more efficient, what's going to not slow things down, you know. Because I know putting me there will slow things down. It's like Paul Heyman always says, like, accentuate the strengths, hide the weaknesses, you know. We've already got things running against us. Might as well try to push out the best of what we've got, kind of thing. But anyway, I digress. Sorry, this is just, I don't know. It's so easy talking with you. I was looking forward to just shooting the shit with you. I really feel like we could just talk about anything, to be honest. But we are here to talk about spirituality. I guess it's kind of like finishing off what we started last time. The last show, was it in December? Maybe it was
either December or late November.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Wow. We tried, guys. Just things come up, you know. Grateful that you're back here, man. Thank you so much. So the questions I got a couple for you that I had saved, and then a bunch of questions from Vilma. Shout out to Vilma. I love you. And yeah, I don't know, just anywhere you want to take it as well, dude. If there's anything you want to sort of discuss. But let's just pop into something interesting. So, in your opinion, why do people take spirituality so seriously, especially now?
Well, it changes lives. When people begin their spiritual path, they see the changes in not just their life as they present themselves, but also in the way that their mind works. The way that you contemplate things, the way you think about things, your perspective, I feel like spirituality is the most effective perspective shift that a person can involve themselves with. If you're having, issues with life, issues with jobs, like we were just talking about, with relationships, with yourself, confidence, everything, every single mental aspect of life, for some reason, it changes when you start to take spirituality seriously. And also, I think a lot of it is because in like the Western developed world, we're sort of taught that spirituality is one thing, and then when you sort of discover what it means for yourself, it becomes something far greater and deeper than what you ever thought or were told that it was. And it sort of, especially for me, it redefines not just myself and who I am, but what the world is, and really what the purpose of life is. So I think that's why people start taking it pretty seriously when they begin down this path.
So what are people missing then? You say that there's this one particular idea of what spirituality is. What is it that people are missing? What at its core is spirituality?
To me, what they're missing is in the normal spiritual nomenclature that we're taught through religions, we're taught to look externally for someone to sort of tell us what spirituality is. We're looking to a priest, we're looking to a church, we're looking to some sort of authority figure to let us in, like they're the gateway to God or whatever. When in reality, you realize that it's actually within you and yourself. I think that's the biggest thing that people are missing. And that's what really shifts the effectiveness of like the spiritual path, quote unquote.
There is something to it. Like I've tried to sort of tap into something over the years, but I feel like a lot of the time I'm struggling with just what's going on. It's hard to get into that mindset. But like, I'll give you an example. Like I was managing a cloakroom the other day and I found that there was periods of time where I was just on my own, like there's nothing going on. So I was like, I'm going to meditate, And I've been in a lot of pain. I'm still in a lot of pain. So I'll probably try this after we're done today. But I never really know if I'm doing it properly. But I just closed my eyes. I concentrated on my breathing, all the things they tell you you're supposed to do. And at one point, I remember like opening my eyes and I felt very calm, like kind of how I used to feel when I was training and I was done with the whole exercise and I'd been in the sauna and I was drying off and just sitting down and relaxing. Like it kind of felt like that. And I was like, oh, I did that. Wow. What is that? Can you speak to meditation? Do you? I'm guessing you try it from time to time. Like what can it give you? What's the important significance of meditation within the realm of spirituality?
Yeah, this is a great topic. First of all, you're not doing it wrong. There's no way to do it wrong. I think that's a pitfall. A lot of people think like when they start to meditate, you're like, am I doing this right? Am I doing it wrong? And like, you're doing it right if you're like, if you close your eyes and people always say focus on your breath, that's a great method because it forces you to sort of like come in to yourself as opposed to like think about things. And what I think the essence of meditation is, it's like when you can observe your thoughts and you can disconnect yourself from them. So you see a thought arise, and then instead of getting caught in like the loop of that thought and where it takes you, you realize, oh, wait, like I'm thinking about this thing. And then you come back to yourself, back to your breath. That's the essence of meditation. It's essentially just not allowing yourself to get caught in a trail of a particular thought. I mean, so if you're doing that, you're doing it right, in my opinion. And I think that the purpose of meditation, people think that like you're supposed to meditate and then all of a sudden you're going to feel great. Like your life is going to change. Like you're going to get up after you're done and you're going to be like this enlightened being floating on planet Earth and lights pouring out of your head. You know what I mean? That's not necessarily what it's about. Like for me, it's about connecting with the thing that lies beneath who you think you are. Because I think one of the main questions of spirituality is, who am I? What am I? Like, what is this thing that I'm doing here? And then when you start to ask yourself that during meditation, you can realize that who's asking the question? Who is thinking about the thoughts? And then you kind of transition from identifying yourself as the thoughts that you have and your preferences as a person to identifying as the witness of those thoughts. Because we often identify ourselves as the thoughts and our preferences that are going on in my head, like I am, Josh, this thing that people call Josh. I am, the merchant support manager for this particular company that I work for. I am the person who likes this type of book and this type of music. But when you realize that, like, you are not defined by your preferences, I think that's a big thing. When you can separate yourself from who you think you are. I mean, that's sort of getting down like a more advanced, like philosophical, interpretation of like what you are and, what meditation can give you. But I think at its core, when you can identify with the witness, like who's asking the question, who's witnessing the thoughts that are coming in and then going out, and who's asking the question, who is saying, who is disconnecting from the thought. Like when a thought comes in your head while you're meditating and you don't allow yourself to go down that thought route, like who is it? What is it that is able to, like, what are you resting into that allows you to disconnect yourself from who you think you are?
And
then that just, like, to me, that's like the essence of like understanding the mystery, like that's what I consider it. God, whatever you want to call it. To me, it's a grand mystery.
Who knows, man? Who knows? I've been wrestling with those questions probably my whole life. I think because, we've said this on previous conversations with each other that, you're living two lives essentially. The life in this, whatever this is, and then your spiritual life, that I feel like, sad as it sounds, not enough time really gets devoted to the spiritual life because too much of it is clouded in dealing with this. Like, I know that with me, like, I struggle because it's just too much trying to survive rather than like trying to thrive. But just, I don't know. It's the demands of life, isn't it? But certainly your attitude towards things can help. In my 30s so far, I think a big lesson I've learned is to just let loads of things go. Even if things stress you out, just let a lot more go than you did before. And if it comes across like you don't give a fuck, you're probably onto something there. I'm kind of scared at how much I don't give a fuck about things.
Things that necessarily not giving a fuck about things. I like to say it's more like, again, like how I said, being attached to your preferences. Like if I'm attached to the way that I think things should be,
okay,
that's going to cause me pain and cause me suffering. Not because of the thing that's happening, but because I'm attaching myself to how I think that thing should be. And when you can separate yourself from your preferences of how you think things should be, then you become more responsive to situations as opposed to reactive, if that makes sense.
Okay, what about if your life doesn't look anything like how you want it to look, and you've been working a good portion of your life to try and create this life that you want, but you're not leading the life that you want? What then?
Well, I mean, there's definitely room for having goals, wanting to, be better and do better. I think some people they misinterpret this type of thing as like, you shouldn't care about where your life is going. Like you shouldn't have these goals and these preferences as to, what you want your life to be like. But I think what what I tend to think about it is like the spiritual nature of reality helps me to be the type of person that is going to more successfully follow the path that I want my life to be like. And it sort of changes your preferences as well. But these things are not mutually exclusive. The spiritual path and having sort of a spiritual philosophy helps, I think, with whatever goals you have in the physical world, because it kind of creates context. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's almost like you're more well equipped to deal with things because you put that time in to try and understand that thing that maybe was previously untapped. I mean, certainly when I look at how I used to deal with things years ago and how I deal with them now, like, it's by no means perfect, but the mindset has changed, and I think a lot of that is to do with age and experience, but also choices. What you let go, what you choose to focus your energy and time and effort on. I think an interesting one for me is, as I get older, people I end up working with are younger, right? And, they're fresh of energy, but they're also very naive because they're young, because they don't know yet, And I don't come in bulldozing, being like, wait till this happens, because that sucks, man. But you try to throw ideas every now and again, be like, well, what about this? Or, I learned this. Maybe this will be helpful. Or, and sometimes people are like, yeah, okay. Or other times people are like, oh, wow. Or sometimes people are like, okay, I'll take that on board. But it's interesting because I remember that feeling of being presented these ideas at a young age. And when you're younger, you're more likely to take risks and you're more kind of gung-ho with it all. But I think as you get older, you're more measured and you take time to consider things, and maybe you take less risks. Doesn't mean you don't take risks, but you're more calculated with it and how to approach it and stuff. And I think a big thing I've learned is that you try to approach things with this idea of like, whatever happens, I'll figure it out. Even if I don't know what I'm doing, I'll figure it out somehow, some way. I mean, what say you?
Yeah, man. And that's kind of what I mean by being responsive as opposed to being reactive. Mm-hmm. When something happens in your life and you have like an emotional reaction to that thing, a lot of times that emotional reaction, especially if we're talking about something traumatic, something that doesn't go the way that you want it to go, having an emotional reaction to that is allowing the situation to dictate how you are feeling both internally and then how you respond externally. But being responsive to something is, you're centered within yourself and you decide how you are going to respond to the situation with the spiritual, mental foundation of being centered within yourself, as opposed to, again, allowing some situation that's external to you that you maybe or more than likely can't control, dictating how you are feeling and how you are reacting to a situation. And that's not easy. Like, none of this is easy. None of this thing that I'm talking about here, like I have mastered or like I do, or you know what I mean? Like I'm just as flawed as everybody else. I just try,
I brought you here as the foremost expert on spirituality, and now you're saying it's all a lie.
There's no such thing as enlightenment. We're all just running around this planet trying to figure it out. Sorry.
Do you know, I was in the supermarket earlier, and I was being honest. This is just how it seems to me. I feel like I'm in a fucking simulation in a video game or like in the Matrix or something. And I always used to laugh at shit like that in the past, be like, oh yeah, okay, we're all in the Matrix. But like when I see how people act now, it's literally like everyone's a fucking NPC, and like I struggle to find the like real human beings. Like they're there. And like for instance, that there's this dude wandering around that works at this supermarket that's cool as shit. Like he's really built. He's got long ginger hair. He wears a hat, and he's just got good vibes. Like at Christmas, he was wearing like a Christmas hat, and I was like, "Nice hat, dude." He was like, "Thanks." It's just like this guy exudes cool. And then like everyone else is just like a zombie, you know? And I'm like, fuck is wrong with you? Wake up. That film, it might as well be a documentary at this point.
We're all on rails, you know. Did you ever play like the arcade? There's this game called House of the Dead, where you you hold the gun and you shoot the zombies, but you don't actually move. Like the game takes you where you have to go.
Yeah,
they call that like an on rails game, and that's like what life is. We're just sort of all on rails. We're all on this sort of autopilot mode. But sometimes, you know, I think it's important to realize that you're on autopilot and realize that you're on rails. And then you can more effectively, you know, take out the zombies. And sometimes if you're lucky and if you work real hard, you can pop yourself off the rails and go your own direction. But that's kind of what it reminded me of what you said there.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're onto something there, but I think the whole self-awareness thing, not happening. I mean, if you don't realize, then you're part of it, you know, and you don't see it. Like, you know, like I was in the lift earlier and I didn't have my phone on me. I'm just waiting, and this guy's just like, I was just watching him on the phone, just like dude, like he's just like this with the phone. And I was just thinking, like, he's a machine, obsessed with a machine, and that's all it is. There's no substance there. There's no human there. There's no spirit there. We live in a time where everyone is obsessed with AI, and people are having their fun and going crazy with it, right? But in many ways, some people are theorizing it's the death of the artist. And, you know, I refuse to accept that. As an artist myself, I think from this moment till the day I die, I'll always be an artist. And I don't care. I'll scream it off the rooftops, even if everyone tells me to shut up. But, like, AI will not kill dead what has existed for thousands and thousands of years. Art is often the speech of those who are unheard, the dying words from a dying man who never got to really live the life the way he wanted to live it. And, you know, it's pure heart and soul, and you can't create that with a computer program. You know, and I don't want to get into a big discussion about AI with you, but I think
I do like the topic.
Maybe we'll bookmark that for another show, eh?
Yes, let's do it.
I will say this, though. You can't deny that it comes at a very coincidental time, you know. A time when there was supposed to be a lot of spirituality and people waking up and everything, and now you bring in this new... I almost feel like it was brought in deliberately to kind of quash all of that. To be like, oh, people are waking up. Let's give them something that will completely shut them down and make them mindless drones. You know, because there's no thinking, there's no brains activated, working, doing anything. Now, I'm not saying everything created with AI is completely useless. I use it a little bit with the podcast, just for little things. I think it's great as a tool, but it's being used to replace everything, to generate art, which I feel like that's unacceptable. I really do. I feel like it's cheating. It's not real. Most importantly, it's soulless. And through all the progress we might have been making in the 2010s from a sort of a spiritual perspective, I feel like those days are dying now. And, you know, increasingly we're getting more and more divided, and everything's becoming a lot more robotic. And it's, I don't know, like I see a lot of people on social media like pining for the past, and I get it, you know? Like, have you ever heard of Frutiger Arrow?
I don't think so, no.
Oh, maybe I'm not pronouncing it correctly. It's like early 2000s aesthetic. If you remember like early days of Windows XP, and like how everything was kind of futuristic vibes, like old flip phones and shit, like just kind of like this idea of a space age vibe, but very colorful, very fluorescent colors, like, you know, just fun, colorful, full of life, but futuristic. And that died somewhere in the 2000s, and that whole vision of the future, what we could have had, is gone, and we've got this kind of cold, almost dystopian future now, more in line with like a Black Mirror episode than an actual Wanted future. Like, it's why I can't watch that show. People are like, oh, you should watch this show, it's great. I'm like, I got through like 3 seasons and I was like, this is just a documentary. This is not fiction. This is just either here's what's going on now or here's what's going to happen next. I'm like, no, please God, no. It's crazy.
The first 2 seasons are fantastic. As long as you got through those, you don't need to worry about the other ones. But
even just getting through the first episode is brutal, man. I felt sick to my stomach. There was an episode in the second season. I won't say too much, but there's like a twist and a horrible reveal about this kid. I say kid, he's like 19 or something, right? Face Off in the Woods. That sound familiar? Yeah. I won't say anymore.
Is that the one with John Hamm, dude from Mad Men?
No,
in the cabin or whatever.
No, they started getting like big celebs much later on. This is like the earlier days. Season 2, maybe they had some celebs then. I don't know. I feel like that started happening in season 3 onwards because you had like Bryce Dallas Howard in that. Like, the last episode I watched was with her, and it's basically Instagram meets social credit system, and I was like, ha,
that one.
No, thank you.
Yeah,
yeah, but it was spot on. But that episode in the second season, there's a bank robbery involved. There's a face-off in the woods. There's a horrible, horrible twist. And I was so traumatized. I remember sitting there with one of my younger brothers. And I just turned and looked at him. And we looked at each other. And I just hugged him. And I was like, oh my God. Like, we were both just traumatized. Just like, oh my God. Shout out to Charlie Brooker, man. He knows how to make a series that's impactful, meaningful. Yeah, I guess you could say it's entertaining. It is, but I think it's far more thought-provoking than it ever is entertaining because it really just gets you thinking about society and just the mess that we're in. Like, he even took some time off, actually, from doing it because he felt like society was just too doomed. And he just needed, like, some time, and I was like, I get it, man.
Yeah, if you immerse yourself into like dystopian future stories, I could definitely see why you could get a little bit depressed, have to take a step back.
Well, it's like when I look at everything in society now as almost like in a similar way to like how Attenborough looks at nature. Right? I'm like, oh, fascinating, TikTok creator. Oh, what are they doing? But then I start looking at their lives and remembering, oh, these aren't animals in the wild. This is human beings, real people, not playing personas. They're real people. And they're either ignoring the consequences or are chasing the almighty dollar or something. And you can see the depression. You can see the hard times. You can see things playing out in real time, and it's devastating, you know. But it's by choice, it's by design. They wish it, they want it, they don't care about the repercussions. I can't for the life of me think why is that. Why do they want that? What am I missing? I don't know. I see crazy things like certain places in the world that often attract like influencers, right? And you've got like entire streets full to the brim with these influencers who just have their camera setups and everything, and it's like they're just hounding people on the street. And like, don't get me wrong, not all of them are bad. Some of them are doing some real awesome stuff, but a lot of them are just trying to make a quick buck or trying to hop on this wagon or whatever. I don't know. I think it kind of just adds to this dystopian world that we're living in. Even when I walk through the streets of Manchester, I see people constantly filming, constantly doing things, and it's like, whatever happened to just being in the moment? Like today, I'm going to a gig tonight, right? It's a band that's actually appeared on my podcast, and they finally are coming up north, and I was like, wow, I have to be there. You know, oh my God, it's a free gig. Sick. Let's go. And, you know, I'll probably clip like maybe one small clip of them. Just so I got like a clip, and then that'll be it. I won't touch my phone. I'll just be in it. But you see people at gigs these days, people walking down the street, you know, everyone's just on their phone. I know it's the same old boring rhetoric. Honestly, it's and it's kind of concerning. And bringing it back to our conversation about spirituality, I'm sure. Which city are you in right now?
I'm in Allentown in Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, that's right. Yeah. So, what are you seeing over there in the States, like in Pennsylvania? When you're walking around, it's a Sunday. You're walking around. You're with the missus. What are you seeing as you walk down the street?
I mean, very much the same thing that, you're talking about. And to bring it back to Attenborough and nature, I think oftentimes it's really easy to get lost in the fact that like we are this apex, human. We are different than every other animal, and we definitely are. Like we are exceptionally different than every other animal on this earth in lots of ways, but we're also just the same as them. You ever see a show, it's on Netflix, called Chimp Empire?
No, sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome. So essentially what it is, like there's these guys who spent like 10, 20 years like in the jungle, and they were observing like a tribe of chimps. And what happened, like they would stay just outside the border of the territory of these chimps. So the chimps got really used to them and just ignored them. So they were basically allowed to just observe for years and years what these chimps were doing and how their hierarchies worked. And they do like the exact same thing that we do, So we still have one foot in the primate door. And I think we have to realize that about ourselves, when it comes to the phones and when it comes to all the distractions, we are just like part primate, and we are very susceptible to distractions, very susceptible to manipulation. We're in the developed nations of the world, we're, especially in America, we have this American dream, you come here and you just dedicate your whole life to working, and then you can get a house and you can get a car and you can go to the grocery store and there's a million different selections of cereal and all types of, and that is a distraction. It's a distraction to get people to come here, and not just people to come here, but it's a distraction for people who are already here to sacrifice 8 hours or more of their day to working toward keeping this system going so that, it can continue to evolve and roll, and people can continue to make money, and, the corporations can exist, and the power structures can continue to, reign supreme over the people. We are very susceptible to distractions that help us to both survive and also realize luxury in our lives.
The American dream is an interesting one, because I think from what I've seen from consuming history and media over the last, let's say, 200 years of American history, it seems to me as though the conventional... Actually, let me put it a better way. The American dream is not available to everyone. It still exists. Every now and again you hear a story. The best one I can think of, this is so random, but there's a professional wrestler called Rusev. He's from Bulgaria. And I think he's been in the States since the early 2010s. I might be wrong on that. Anyway, I think he's a American citizen now. I don't know. I can't remember exactly. But I know that he's still living and working there, and he has been, I guess it's like 15 odd years now, give or take. And I remember him speaking about his experiences, it very much sounded like the American dream, the way he kind of mapped it out and said, like, I came here with nothing and I built this career up and now I've got all this. And I'm like, okay, right. So it does exist on some level. But then you hear the endless stories of not just people coming over from other countries, but, people born and raised in the States as well, and how everyone's struggling to make ends meet, and healthcare is just crazy, and I mean, everyone that I know that used to want to travel to the States always says the same thing now, which is, I don't know, man, I wouldn't want to go there now, it's not very safe, it's this, that, and the other. And I know what they mean, I think it's crazy that, okay, I don't want to get too political here, but I just while we're on it, like the whole school shootings thing is to me, it's as crazy as far as like normalization as it was when I remember the Iraq War started, and how in the very beginning you'd see all the news reports and they'd take each and every single thing that happened like it was the most important news ever. And then within a year, like, car bombing was like as routine as like, oh, like the news. Oh, so the weather, like, oh, today it'll be sunny, you know, like it was as bland as that. And I always remember thinking, like, that's crazy. What do you mean? Like, a car got bombed, some people died. And yeah, that's a comment on the news and how they present things and stuff. I know that, but it's the same thing that happens all the time, and it happened with the school shootings thing. Now it's just a part of American culture, which is crazy to say, because what do you mean? It's not culture. But it happens now. It's, if you're in a school in America, you have to expect that there's a big chance that someone might come in and do that. And I know through friends I know in America and just reading about things online as well. I tend to stick to what my friends say though, because it's like, if you live in there, you know better than some fucking news articles, like, you know what I mean, whatever. But the vibe I always seem to get from what they say is that, like, there's protocol in place for stuff like that, and it's just standard now. Just, you know, here's what to do in the event of this, here's where to hide, here's how to try and survive, etc., etc., etc. And I'm not saying it's like anything new, like it just jumped on the scene, but as we know, the frequency of these shootings happening has increased exponentially in the last 10 years. And, you know, there's various reasons for that, obviously, but you know, it shows you like the light where we're at in society, you know. And a lot of people just say like, oh, it's just because of guns. You ban guns, that solves the problem. I'm not so sure about that, you know. Like I certainly it might help, but I mean, this is a whole other discussion in of itself. But there's so many things that like America's contending with, the UK's contending with right now, the whole world is contending with. And I'm really not that surprised within the wider context of why people are shutting down, why people are depressed, why there's so much going on now. And it's like, maybe this is the end of the world. Not necessarily going out with a big bang or you know, some big catastrophe. Maybe it just slowly dies. And that's the end of civilization. So with all of that stuff I just said,
well,
what say you, Josh?
I will say one thing, like, before I go into, so I do love my country, and I do think America is the best place in the world. I think it is the best place for opportunity, for people to do what they want to do, you know. I believe this is the best place, and I'm very happy to be here. I love this country. And I do like talking politics too. So maybe our next episode could be politics and AI.
We could talk it a bit. I think I'm a fence sitter. People get pissed off by that, but you know, I do come down. I make it known where I sit on certain issues. I had a dude from the States a while back, and we had a big discussion on politics. And yeah, he pushed me, prodded me. I made note of the fact that he was trying to do that. That's what he does, but he did it in a fun way. He wasn't disrespectful by any means, and he's an intelligent guy. And I said, look, you know, I will come out on certain issues and say that, and sometimes, but like the whole point of being in the middle is that you have some stuff that's left, have some stuff that's right. Problem is, in both of our nations right now, you get forced to pick a side. Less so in the UK, but definitely in America. It's almost like you have to, and if you don't, like, it's almost like a crime. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, first of all, it should be a personal preference whether or not you even talk about it. Secondly, if you do believe a certain thing, does that mean it's all the way? I mean, I don't know I know a lot of people that are into politics that don't necessarily agree with like everything their party comes out with, because I mean, it almost goes back to like identity of what we were saying before. Just because you believe a certain thing doesn't mean like you are that thing. You know what I mean? I think people forget that with politics, and let's say like a party manifesto, like there's a bunch of ideas generated by a lot of people, and even politicians within their own party will argue over things. That's what the Senate exists for. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like people argue over things, and you know,
the Senate exists to take money from special interests, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, the structure of the American government is flawed, but I mean, just ultimately, like to bring it back, like I really do think that the whole problem that you're explaining here is a spiritual problem. Like our culture, both mine and yours, all of the, you know, European nations, I think the Western world, we have a diseased culture, and that begins and ends with spirituality, man. I think that's what causes all of it.
How do we have a diseased culture? What do you mean by that statement?
I think our value systems are completely skewed. We've been, we've been deterred from what's important in life, toward indulging in distractions. I tend to align myself with like the non-dual teachings of reality and philosophy. And what that teaches is, ultimately what we are is peace. What we are is something that exists beyond the physical, something that exists beyond who we think we are, and that exists beyond the chase for happiness and the avoidance of pain. And we get caught in that loop, I think, too dramatically in cultures like ours. Where we are obsessed with avoiding pain, and we are obsessed with seeking out happiness. And those two things, they're impermanent. They don't actually last. Pain doesn't last. When you're in pain, I mean, generally, in a general sense, pain ends. You stub your toe, it hurts for a little while, but then it goes away. And even more so with happiness. You seek something that makes you happy, and then that happiness slowly fades. And what that does is like a cyclical thing where like you're in this cycle of avoiding pain and seeking happiness. And those two emotional states, they're distractions from what's real anyway, which is who you are, the peace within yourself, your true nature. And again, I think these distractions we're just getting caught in them too fiercely.
Let's jump into Vilma's questions and see what she wanted to ask you. So I feel like she always has some interesting thought-provoking stuff.
Yeah.
When your energy feels off, what's the first thing you do to reset it?
Man, well, first, I notice that I'm feeling sorry for myself. That's a big thing, because that's what we all do when we're in pain. We start to feel sorry for ourselves. And then I stop in my tracks and I'm like, okay, stop feeling sorry for yourself first. And like, I think one of the biggest tools that we have is our breath. Like you were saying with meditation, and you don't have to meditate to do it. Just breathe for a second, and center yourself back to who you are, to what you know is real. And I always, I reference my spiritual experiences and what I know spirit to be, and that helps me to center back into myself. And again, as I had mentioned before, instead of being reactive to whatever the situation is and whatever emotional content is coming up from it, I then try is the key word here. I try to be more responsive to that as opposed to reactive. And what that means a lot of times is separating myself from the emotions that whatever the situation brings up. And again, trying to, because there is no such thing as like not feeling emotion. Like you're going to feel the emotion, of course. But what matters is what comes next after you feel that emotion.
What moment in your life made you feel like there's more than just the physical world?
Well, man, my psychedelic experiences, dude.
Yes.
my transcendent experiences.
Which, man, I'll interject as well. We covered this in quite a lot of detail in Josh's first appearance on my podcast, and we've done a bunch of shows together. So if you're enjoying this and you want to kind of see our history together, and I appeared on your show, I think once at least, if I remember correctly.
Twice.
Did I? Twice?
Yeah. I believe twice. Yeah.
Yeah, goddamn. Thank you for that. But yeah, we talked all sorts of things. But that very first episode, I think, is a really good insight into Josh's experience, who he is as a person, if that's not already coming across right now. And that specific experience, which just sounded beautiful and was very thought-provoking. But yeah, so as you were saying, that was kind of, for you, the first time it was more than just the physical world then.
Yeah, there've been many of them, and aside from that, being with the people that I love, witnessing my dog, that's a big one, a really big one. Witnessing an animal that celebrates everything. I leave the room for 30 seconds and I come back and he's pumped, he's celebrating. Dogs, they celebrate every moment, and I think we have a lot to learn about appreciation of every second of every day that we can gain from just observing dogs.
To be fair though, when you don't have to pay rent and you just sit around all day and you get fed whenever you want, it's probably very easy to not have to worry about life's problems. I mean, what's the biggest problem a dog has?
Well, I mean, they have their own set of problems. I think of like I think of children,
right, okay,
children don't pay rent. Children don't have problems. But when you're like, if you think back to when you were a kid, like think back to when you were in like middle school or something, when you're like 13, 14, the little problems that you had when you were younger, they seemed gargantuan because it's always just a matter of perspective, So from a dog's perspective, it might be a big problem if they don't get to pee right on time and they don't get fed right on time. It might be a big problem for them. Or if you leave the house for a day or so or for a few hours, they're just distraught. That's the worst thing that can happen. Or a storm is outside or something, or fireworks. Like, it's all a matter to me of perspective, Like, these problems seem huge to a dog, just the way that my problems seem huge to me, or my problems when I was a teenager seemed huge at the time.
No, I appreciate what you're saying, and I don't mean to demean try and lessen how they perceive things or whatnot. I guess I'm trying to do it tongue in cheek, but also say that they're not having to contend with these things. Therefore, it's much easier for them to live in the moment and be happy because that's all they really know. However, you raise a good point. Who are they and how do they exist when they're on their own and you go away? And we know this. We know what happens, especially with dogs, cats too. They get depressed. They don't really understand. They think you're going to come back and you don't. And the longer it takes, the more they're like, I don't understand. Seems to be that there's like varying levels of intelligence. So some dogs and cats and whatever understand, the human will come back, but after a certain amount of time. We'll get back to the time thing in a second. But some of them just genuinely don't, and they think that every day that you do that, you've abandoned, and oh my god, they've come back, oh my god, and they're just obsessed with you because they don't want you to leave, which is fucking heartbreaking. But I get it, maybe they just don't know, because it's not like you can explain it to them. You could try, I guess, but I don't know if they'd really necessarily get it. Now the time issue, I think that's a really good point. I've noticed, dogs, cats are very punctual about when they get fed, when there's a walk time, stuff like that. I don't know if it's just they have their own clock, or if it's more just kind of they get used to a schedule. I guess that it would make sense because, we have sleeping patterns. We can train our bodies. I think it stands to reason that animals can do the same thing. And I think it also stands to reason that dogs, cats, etc., all have varying levels of intelligence, just like human beings. Some human beings super intelligent, some human beings fucking morons, and some are in the middle. I think we can be really great in one area and not so in another area, and again you see that with animals too. They might have a really great sense of smell but no spatial awareness. Just whatever. I'm right there with you on the whole energy debate thing. I think it's amazing, especially with dogs. But then cats are interesting too because they've got that calming energy. I feel like I have more in common with cats. I love dogs because I love their energy. Every time I see a dog, I get really excited. Like, oh my god, and they're like, oh my god, oh my god. Just, yeah, I'm definitely gonna have dogs when I'm older. But I like cats because cats are just chill, you know. And I think that's why cats like me as well because I'm not like running around crazy. I'm like, and the cat's like, yes, I also too like to
And there's
rest.
nothing quite as comforting as a cat's purr. You know, if a cat's laying on you or something and purring, it's like, it's just great. Love it.
It's got healing properties as well, apparently.
Yeah.
If they do that, it actually heals you. Apparently. Do you think our thoughts create energy around us, or does our energy shape our thoughts first? Oh, interesting.
Well, not to like cop out, but I think it's a paradox. I'd say both. And then I also would think like, so when I think of this question, I think my definition of energy could be different than someone else's definition of energy. Energy is such like an arbitrary word that we use to convey something that is unspeakable. It's something that we can only feel and experience. So I do believe in the existence of what we call energy. And I feel that you can feel somebody else's emotional state based off of the energy that they're exuding. When it comes to your own thoughts, I for sure believe that they exist, or I think they emerge out of your state of energy more so than they create your state of energy, if that makes sense. I think the energy that you exude based off of your thoughts and your emotions can affect somebody else's like field of energy.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately it resides within you and within your, like it comes from your state of emotion, your state of mind, of awareness.
What daily practice makes you feel most connected to existence? Like you're part of something bigger than just yourself?
I think gratitude is a huge one. Just having gratitude. Again, like looking into my dog's eyes and just seeing, like just having gratitude for him being alive, just hugging my fiance and just being so grateful that she's in my life and that, I'm alive here breathing, again, that I'm in America. I'm so lucky, I could be in Gaza right now, just getting, annihilated by bombs. I could be in, any other place in the world where things are just not as easy and luxurious as being here. So yes, I think gratitude is the biggest one. And that can be practiced anytime, whenever I'm feeling, kind of to go back to one of the other questions of, what I kind of do when I feel not so aligned is just sit, breathe, and be grateful. Because I think gratitude is one of the biggest things that we ignore, because we're kind of taught to like appreciate, of course, but then to move on right away. It's this quick hit culture, of like Instagram scrolling. You see one reel and then you have your emotional thought and then you go to the next one, go to the next one, go to the next one. It's like slot machine mentality of life. But I think just kind of being present and grateful changes everything. It can change your emotional state in an instant.
Do you think we choose the people we meet, or does the universe send them to us? Because we always meet them in every single life.
Oh, it's such a cool question. I do tend to believe in like the concept of soulmates, not in the way that like there's like you just have one soulmate and it's like the person that you're romantically involved with. I do think that there's that, but I think that soulmates manifest in reality throughout each incarnation. And this sort of goes back to like I have like this philosophical belief in sort of like a reincarnation, rebirth sort of philosophy that like the Buddhists lay out, or the Hindus lay out. I have a little more of a nuanced way of thinking about it than them, just because I'm an American and I have my own thoughts. I know that I'm wrong. That's number one, because nobody can be correct in this because there's no way of knowing. But I do believe that throughout each incarnation that a person has, there are a specific like amount of quote unquote souls that manifest themselves as people in each of your lives. And what they're meant to do is to teach you something. Because ultimately, I do kind of believe that the meaning of life is to understand and to learn. And I think that other people are, in one way, they are vehicles for that learning.
I'll throw my 2 cents on this as well. I think it does happen. I think we do meet people that we've met before. There's been people I've met over the years. It's interesting. Where I clicked with them instantly. And some of them became friends for a time, others didn't. The ones that didn't, like there's these potential love interests. I remember one time I was shooting a film in Estonia, and there was this woman on the production, and she was a married woman in her 40s or something, and we were just chatting and hitting it off, but not flirting or anything. Like, I knew she was married and stuff. I wasn't trying to hit on her or anything, but it was interesting. Like, I can't remember if it was said or implied or if we spoke about it exactly in these words, but it was kind of said that, like, in another lifetime we were probably married or connected in some way. You could just feel it. You just knew. I was like, I know you. Not in this life, but I know you. I know your energy. And that comes all down to belief. For anyone who doesn't believe in this, it feels crazy. But then I ask you this. If it's so crazy, have you ever had an experience where you felt like you knew someone, or your energy was immediately shunted, changed off because of the influence of someone else? I've walked into rooms before and someone's energy has been off and it affected me. I just knew that they were bad news. I could just feel it. And there's no rational reason for that. There's no logical, scientific reason for that. But something was off. Some things, I think, lead you to believe there's more at work than maybe we know, than we realize. I don't know. Do you think our desires are guiding us towards our real purpose or sometimes distracting us?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? You cut out for just a second in the beginning.
Yeah. So do you think our desires are guiding us towards our real purpose or sometimes distracting us?
I think mostly they're distracting us because I think our desires are linked to our preferences. And when we identify too deeply with those desires and with those preferences, it separates ourselves from ourselves and from what's real, I think. Because again, desires are generally, can be broken down into avoiding pain and seeking out happiness. Because what do you desire ultimately? If I'm desiring a particular food, say I'm hungry and I'm desiring, pizza. I'm desiring that pizza because I know that I'm going to be happy and satisfied when I get the taste of that pizza. You know what I mean? These are preferences. These are things that exist externally from ourselves that if we identify too much with, they become distractions. So yeah, that's what I think.
That's a fascinating way of looking at it. Almost like kind of the needs versus desires argument. I thought about this a lot. If things would work out for me, would I truly be happy? And when I look at like what I want versus what I need, I don't need a lot to be happy, but I know that the things that I'm struggling with are things that I hate. I want to remove those things from my life and replace them with things I love. That to me seems very straightforward. In reality, it's not, because it involves finding work and a lifestyle that would permit me to live as I wish to live and to create as I wish to create. But no, I know what you're saying, because I think people misunderstood me over the years of my goals. Like, they think I want to be like famous or super rich or whatever. And it's like, no, I don't care about fame. I'd like to be secure, like who wouldn't? But more so like just able to do what I need to do than anything else. I think with me, like things like customer service kind of bring out the worst in me. They push me beyond my limits, and you find yourself kind of just exhausted mentally, physically, emotionally afterwards. You know, you just got nothing left. Like, I've been running on reserves for like a year and a half now. It's bad. And when you've exhausted all options and you've gone through all the emotional circles, I guess, you get to a point of clarity where you're just here, you're just trying, but you've got nothing left really. No, it's interesting, you know. People ask, how are you? And I don't really know how to respond to that question. If I'm honest, I say very bad. And then it starts going into solution mode. Well, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? And I'm like, yeah, none of that worked, or I wouldn't do that because it would make me miserable, or, you know, it's the same old stuff. And people are trying to help, I get it, but maybe they don't see the whole journey. I don't know. It's not their journey to figure out or solve. But it's, you know, it's interesting watching the journeys of everyone else and then looking at your own journey and wondering, is there light at the end of that tunnel? Where is it? How long am I going to be on this journey? Am I going to make it? That's something I think about a lot, is if I stay on this train long enough, will I make it to my destination? Or am I just going to kind of derail and not make it, you know?
Reminds me of earlier when I was saying, you know, we're on rails. Like, we're ultimately all going towards something, you know? We're on our way and we're going to end up somewhere. But it's funny, you just reminded me of, there's this, you know, this Eminem lyric. It's a very subtle lyric in one of his earlier songs. And he says, you know, I got problems. Everybody on my block's got them, you know? And it kind of makes me realize and identify as, like, you know, we all do have problems, and everybody has problems. Everybody is like their own individual, like, universe of loves and desires and problems. And it's super interesting to sort of try to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And you bring up, like, getting into solution mode. You know, if somebody asks you how you're doing, and you're like, I'm just not doing good, man. And they're just, you know, they go right into solution mode. Like, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And this is where like, if I ask, or if somebody says that to me, like, if I just say, you know, have you tried, again, being grateful, you know, have you tried the gratitude thing? Because the solution aspect of it always comes from a position of, like, we're going to try to get rid of your problems. You know, the solution is to get rid of your problems. But in reality, that's not always a solution. You know, if you're stuck in a situation where you're working a shitty job that you hate, but you have to pay your bills, like, is someone just going to be like, oh, the way to do that is quit your job and do this and do, like, that's not helpful, you know? But I think the only thing that you can do to make yourself at least feel better in the situation that you're in, and to, again, approach it in a more responsive way, is to sort of be grateful for the things that are in your life that you can be grateful for. Because I think a lot of times what we do is we focus so heavily on, again, like, our preferences, on what we think the world should be like and how we want our lives to be. We focus so heavily on that it takes away our attention from the things in life that are good and that we do need to appreciate and be grateful for, you know?
What I tend to do is the old cliche live in the moment thing.
Yeah.
So whatever I'm doing in the moment, I make that my complete and utter focus. You know, like, for instance, we're doing this lovely podcast right now. We happen to come across this topic, you know, we'll move on to the next topic and so on. It'll come up and I'll give it its time for as long as it needs to be spoken, and then I'll move on. I think if you reflect too much on this stuff, like you mentioned earlier, it can break you down. It can destroy you. I try not to run away from my problems. If people ask me about them, I will talk about them. But I always, especially in live streams, when people have asked me, I'll always find, like, there's a wall. There's, like, a moment where it's like, okay, we've talked enough now, time to move on, you know. Because it becomes dwelling, it becomes self-serving. It's not, problem is a problem, you know. It's, no amount of talking about it is going to change it. And this whole living in the moment thing, I mean, I've practiced the whole gratitude thing, and it does work. I remember my ex's father, I've told this story before. I'm a cop during the Soviet era. We were sat across a dinner table from each other, and we were eating, and I was full. I couldn't really eat much that night. And he was like, "Aren't you going to eat?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm just not that hungry." And he was like, "You should eat. You never know when your next meal's coming." And it just hit me like a train. Because I knew that this was a man, like, when he says something like that, you knew that he had gone without food for long periods of time. And, like, every time he got food was like a blessing. And he wasn't a religious man or anything. He just had seen some shit, experienced the worst of life. And yeah, I've been there, man. I've been in positions, even recently, where there's just like no food, nothing going on. You're struggling to make ends meet. And things get better, then they get worse, then they get better, then they get worse, and that's life. Having a matter of perspective does help things, I think. It doesn't change the problems, but you know, you are always able to control your reaction to things. It's the one blessing of free will, I guess, is your ability to be able to do that. And I look at things like bringing it back to living in the moment, right? I think your attitude, for the most part, it can work against you. If you carry yourself in a manner like, everything is terrible, life is terrible, oh, it sucks, woe is me, people just won't like you. People will just find you, like, just boring. And I've said this in live streams when people come in, they're like, "Oh, all you do is complain." I'm like, "You've been here 5 minutes. Were you here the last 3 times I streamed? Were you here the whole hour? No, you heard 5 minutes of like a 2-hour conversation, you know? And the 5 minutes is a quick reflection. It's not it's not life. Like, I always choose to compartmentalize my problems and put them in a box. Like, when I go out this evening, I'm not going to be thinking about my problems. I'm going to be going out and watching a kick-ass band. Then I come home, maybe then I'll think about my problems. I don't know. Hopefully I won't. But, you know, it's like, you know what I'm saying, right? Like, you just, I want to spend my energy on more enjoyable shit than worrying about things going wrong. Because there'll always be problems. There'll always be things going wrong. Everyone has problems, like you said. I think that's why people come to my live streams a lot of the time, is because they're all experiencing some stuff. Like, some of them I know are experiencing some really tough times, and they come to my stream and they get a bit of humor, they get maybe some sarcasm. I'm getting much more sarcastic as I get older. That's a good coping mechanism, sarcasm, I feel. Humor, dark humor especially, if you can laugh at your problems. I know therapists that have a field day with that, but I don't care, man. It's, you know, therapy is too expensive. Y'all don't care. You get paid by the hour, and dark jokes make everything better. It's just the way it works.
I'm with you, man. And I'll say one more thing on this. Again, just like any chance I get to plug my psychedelic experiences, I'll do.
Hell yeah.
But man, just having the experience, and this is like, not to sound too like born again Christian, but like having the experience of like connecting with what we would call God, being able to reflect back on that, that's another thing that works along with gratitude. That comes with the gratitude is knowing that thing exists, you know, knowing that God is real, or whatever you want to call it. It just being able to reflect on that thought, it changes everything. That's how powerful it can be.
Hold up a second. I know essentially what you're saying is you're like me, agnostic, don't necessarily believe one way or another. But are you kind of saying, like, during that experience, you maybe question the existence of God?
Not questioned. It's shown to you that this is a real thing, like without a doubt. There's no doubt.
Back up a second. Are you saying that when you had your experience, that it showed you that God is real or exists?
Absolutely. But it also redefined what God is, because we're always told that God is like some dude in the sky with a big beard who's judging you for all of your actions. And then, he's going to ultimately judge whether or not you get to go to the good place or the bad place. That is not God to me. What I was shown was that God, and like the reason I use God as the word is because it's the only word in the English language that can convey what it is that we're speaking about. This like transcendent other, this mystical transcendent intelligence. But yes, it was shown to me that without a doubt, if there's anything that I believe to be true in my life, it is that there is that thing. You can call it God. I'll call it God just because it's the word that we all know it as. But 100%, I'm more sure about that than anything in my life.
What made you so sure?
Being able to experience it. Because it's what they call ineffable. You can describe certain things to people. Like imagine this, I like to compare it to sex. Okay. Imagine if someone told you about what sex was, but you never had it. You'd never know it. You would have this like arbitrary idea of what it might be like. You'd reflect back on the words people told you about it, and you'd form an opinion on what you think it might be, and then maybe your opinion would get really, really strong, and you'd start telling other people what you thought it was. But unless you actually have it, unless you have the experience of it, you have no idea of what it is. And that is what God is to me. It is something to experience. It's something to be, not to know.
Now that's interesting. State of consciousness, maybe.
Because you feel it in you. Like it's not something, again, that is external from you. It is something that is arising from you. It exists within you, and it feels, when you connect with it, it feels more real than this reality is. Like when I look externally at the walls around me and whatever, it's more real than that. It's real on a deeper level than what we currently define as reality, which is why I call it God. It's a transcendent, it's not a place. It's almost like it's a transcendent reality that is here right now. It's in, through, and all around everything. It doesn't exist somewhere externally. It's not a place you go. It's something that you remember even. It feels familiar. It's almost like people call it source. I like that word for it, source. It's like the source of all things, the source of you, yourself, of soul, of life, of nature. It's very hard to describe, but that's because it's impossible to put into words. It's only understandable through direct experience. My brother, he has this quote. He says, "Experience is king," and I love that.
Have you experienced the concept of God more than once then?
Yes, many times.
Was every time the same? Similar?
The essence of it is similar, but a lot it's different, but it's also the same. It presents itself differently each time. But it's a recreatable experience. It's the reason why I take psychedelics. I never got into psychedelics for fun. I never, went to a party and took mushrooms and was like, yeah, this is awesome. And like, that was never, ever my intention. Not once. I've only ever taken psychedelics with the intention of connecting with myself and with the transcendent God, or whatever you want to call it. Because that was my introduction to the substance. I don't have an interest in drugs. I mean, full disclaimer, I like marijuana, but who doesn't? But I don't do drugs. I've never done cocaine or any opiates or I've never done drugs. I just don't have an interest in that. But I do have an interest in understanding and learning and spirituality and philosophy. And through my studies, I came across, people who have used these substances, to achieve just that. And, ancient cultures over thousands of years who have done it. And then I decided to sort of break my preconceived notions of what these things were. And instead of labeling them as drugs in the same category as the rest of them, I thought maybe these are sacramental substances that can be used in, a more responsible way. And it turns out they can be, and they have been for thousands of years.
In each of these instances where you felt like you had an experience or an encounter with God, did they talk to you? Was there a conversation or a dialogue, an understanding, anything like that?
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes it is a direct experience of merging with a level of consciousness that exists beyond words. And then sometimes it sort of comes down to your level and manifests itself in like a dialogue, like you said. I had one experience. It was really, really cool. It was on like, it wasn't on an insanely high dose, but it was a pretty high dose where a lot of times what happens in the beginning is like this anxiety comes up and you start to get like scared and the alarm bells in your mind start going off because your default mode network and your consciousness are shifting. So it's like a panicky feeling, at least for me. And then when you get through that and you sort of break through into like the experience for what it is at its quote unquote peak, the one time it came to me as like this dialogue where it was just like I connected with this universal mind, and it was like it like said to me in plain English, like in my mind, you can ask me anything. Like I am this ultra intelligence of the universe. Like ask me a question. Like that's what you're here for, right? To learn. So ask me anything. And it's very gestury. It's very, very like playful. And I would ask it a question, and it would be like, that's too human of a question. Like I can't answer that in English for you, but let me give you this. And it like gave me this experience, this feeling of being the answer to the question. And that was an answer, like that was the answer that I needed as an experience that existed beyond the words that could like give me this human answer that I was seeking. And it happened over and over. I'd be like, okay, oh, that's awesome. And I was like, okay, so then what about this question? And it would wink at me and say, nope, can't give you that answer in English, but here's this experience. And it gave me like an experience that felt like it would lasted an eternity, but it was like a minute. That's another thing about time. It's very interesting, but I hope that answered the question.
So with those experiences, did you walk away with an actual answer when you were like awake, or like what?
Yes and no. I walk away with a recontextualization of what the question is, where it's coming from, and why I'm asking it. This a lot of times goes back to the preferences, because I'll ask a question, and the reason I ask that question is because I want to know. I have a preference as to whether or not I know a particular thing, whether or not I have knowledge in a particular topic. And that the contextualization of the experience of having an answer as opposed to like knowing it in the way that my brain wants to, sometimes is all the answer that I need, it gives me then the foundation to build an answer in my everyday life that satisfies like my need to quote unquote know in English, if that makes sense.
Do you think intuition is a quiet voice or a feeling in the body? And how can we tell the difference from fear?
I think both. They're intertwined. The deep knowing of intuition, I think, is intertwined with the body. This goes back to like a brain-body connection. Me personally, I feel a lot of intuition in my gut. I don't know if it's because I have Crohn's disease. I've been suffering from that since, 36 now. I was 17 when I was diagnosed, so a long time ago.
How old are you? Are you 36 now?
Yep.
Damn, good.
Yeah. And so I feel a lot of emotional and intuitional content in my stomach. Some people feel it in their extremities or their bones or whatever, and I feel like that's there's a brain-body connection there. I think the intuition is both brain and body, for sure.
Oh, you'll like this question. Thank you so much for these, Vilma. If your highest self visited you today, what do you think they would tell you to stop doing?
Man, what a great question. My highest self, I believe everybody's highest self is always with them. It's, just a thought away. Again, identifying yourself with the witness is a way to connect to your higher self.
What do you mean when you say the witness?
The witness of your own thoughts when you meditate and you see your thoughts come in, and you ask yourself, like, so who's thinking about that thought? And then you let that thought trail away. That's sort of a way of identifying with your higher self, resting into pure peace, I think, is a way of identifying with your higher self. And I don't know if I would say that it would tell me to stop doing something. I think it would tell me to approach things from a perspective of love. And whatever that means, if I'm doing something in my life that is not approached from the perspective and foundation of love, then stop doing that thing, no matter what it is. And what I think it would probably be right now, if I were to put like a human thing on it, it would be eating better, more than likely, especially because I have freaking Crohn's disease. I should be eating like way, way better. Taking care of my body. I do exercise quite a bit. I can't now because I freaking injured my arm a little bit, but taking care of my body, eating better would probably be the biggest like human thing it would tell me to do.
What has spirituality taught you about life?
Oh man. Everything, I would say.
Fair enough. Yeah. All right.
Recontextualized and redefined every molecule of life, like everything, every single thing that I thought I knew and that I thought was real, annihilated. And I was able to build myself up back from a different foundation. It's like, you grow up and, you're taught language and you're taught to put words onto things. And, I see a bird outside and that's a robin or that's an eagle. And, like you put words onto things and then you sort of have ownership of them, you can move on after that, after you define things. But when so my spiritual experiences have broken all of that down to the very foundation of who I think I am. It's broken language down. It's everything. I used to be really, really attached to science. And these experiences put science in a little box for me, taped it up, wrote Earth on it, and threw it in a closet. This is just a very small aspect of what reality actually is. And foundationally for me, my whole belief system was based off of science and how the world works, so that was a huge one that it just took that all apart. And when your whole worldview is shattered and taken apart, you have to build back up from the foundation that is then created. And that's one of the main benefits, I think, of psychedelics is it shatters your whole reality. Now, some people, it destabilizes them and they have issues. That's a real thing that not enough people talk about. But when your entire reality is shattered and then you're forced to then build upon, you build yourself back up based upon the foundation of the lessons that the psychedelic and that of God teaches you, it redefines every aspect of life. And it did that for me.
So, final thoughts for today. What's going through your mind?
Gratitude, man. I'm really grateful that you and I were able to, have this conversation. And I really appreciate you having me on, dude. I love talking about this stuff. It's made all the difference in my life. And I see that there is this renaissance of, philosophical belief based in, the lessons of psychedelics that people are beginning to catch on to. It's becoming huge. And, kind of talking about AI and technology too, I think that the renaissance of technology and AI happening at the same time as psychedelics is not a coincidence. I think that they're related. I think that technological advancement and spiritual advancement are both two sides of the same coin. And we in the Western world have ignored one side of that coin in favor of the other for too long. And I think that the resurgence of both of these things are they're merging. I see a merger of, ancient plant philosophy and nature with the technological prowess of, the Western mind.
It's always a pleasure having you on the show, Josh. We've spoken about it a little bit, but it does remind me a lot of the first time we ever had a conversation. It's years ago now, but
Yeah.
it's pretty incredible. I implore everyone to go check out that first show. It's like 100 and something, 80 something. I don't know exactly what episode. Always a pleasure. I hope we have many more in the future. Please go out of your way to check out the Pursuit of Infinity podcast. If you liked what we spoke about today, you'll see Josh and his brother interview a range of different people all around the world in this kind of sphere and gauge in their mindset and insight and everything. But yeah, always a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Christian. It's truly my pleasure.
To all the listeners of the Christian Reeve podcast, as always, be safe, be well, and I'll see you in the next one.